This is the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to the development agreement for the library renovation project. On a vote of 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a development agreement with Monadnock Economic Development Corporation or its assigns, the library trustees, and the Friends of the Public Library, together with all necessary documents and agreements in a form acceptable to the city attorney, including but not limited to purchase and sale agreements, deeds of transfer, financing documents, leases, for the purposes of financing, constructing, operating, and maintaining the library renovation project. Introduced by Councilor Greenwald.
Councilor Greenwald.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Councilor Greenwald.
Thank you, Your Honor. We had a presentation from the library, it was the Library Annex Advisory Committee, trustees, friends, and city staff regarding the project that we are about to undertake. There's already fundraising that's been done. Going back in time a bit, it all began somewhere around January 2013. Moving forward, March 14th, 2014, the parties being the city and the trustees and the friends signed a memorandum of understanding regarding the possible expansion and renovation to the library. Many things have progressed. I won't take you through all the approvals, but it's moving along very nicely. Next comes this major issue of securing all the financing, which involves a very complex scheme. And I've already forewarned the staff that someone else is going to explain it because it is an extremely complex event. New market tax credits, and again, I don't know if the city manager is going to do it or if the representative from MEDC is. One thing I did want to point out is the fundraising has been going and moving along extremely well. The last total that we were told, they're over 73% of the way towards their fundraising goal, and upwards of $4 million has been already either collected or as pledges. So the public is coming forth. All of the trustees, I believe, have contributed to the project. And now, in order for it to move forward, what you're going to be hearing from, in order for MEDC to move forward and secure all the funding and the development agreement as presented, it needs to be signed. So at that, I will stop talking and Your Honor, who is going to explain the funding?
Actually, I was going to explain it, and I think I probably could explain it, but I think it would be best if Mr. Dugan explained it because he is the captain of this process. In essence, what occurs is there's a transfer of value. The city puts money into the fund from the standpoint of its bond. There is a funding mechanism related to tax credits that increases the value of that and expands the ability of the city to increase the project. And in essence, the value of that, the payback of that goes through the tax increment financing for the district for the most part. So we have Steve Thornton here on the city side to be able to explain the expenditure side, and Jack Dugan, who is here to explain the actual process and funding mechanism itself. Did I do okay there, Jack? You don't think you? I think the details will be of interest to those who haven't heard them in the past, but they can also be somewhat convoluted and confusing. So that's why I tried to simplify it in a way that I understand it. So, Mayor, Mr. Thornton and Mr. Dugan, if you don't mind.
Jack, would you like to come up? And Steve? So who wants to go first?
I guess I'll go first if that's okay with you. I'm Jack Dugan. I'm with Monadnock Economic Development Corporation, and we're at 51 Railroad Street in Keene. And to try to explain New Market's tax credits in a couple of minutes may take a bit, so I'm going to kind of gloss over it a bit. But basically, New Market's tax credits is a federal program. It's run out of Washington, D.C. through the Community Development Finance Institution, CDFI. It's been in effect, the program has been in effect for over a decade now, actually, and it was just reauthorized for 5 more years on a strongly bipartisan vote in Congress. And essentially what the program does is it tries to promote economic and community development in low-income census tracts across the country. And the way that they try to induce that development is to offer a tax credit to a project equal to 39% of the entire project. So in this case, and you can get a little creative how you define a project, but in this case, how we're defining the project at the annex is the construction costs associated with renovating the building and building the connector, and all the site work associated with the redevelopment of the site. It also includes attributing a value to the property itself that we will purchase. It includes furniture, fixtures, and equipment, all soft costs related to the development, all fees and other development costs. And if you add that all up, we're talking in the neighborhood of about a $13.7 million project related to the annex redevelopment project. So if you get a 39% federal tax credit of $13.7 million, and what we do then is we sell those tax credits to investors. And the standard industry price right now for those tax credits is 85 cents on the dollar. That would realize almost $4.5 million of other people's money to help pay for this project in downtown Keene. Now we have a little extra incentive, and we're excited about moving this project forward as quickly as possible, and that this project has gained the favor of a community development entity that has these tax credits available right now to sub-allocate to this project. And they want to get the money into this project, and to that end, they have lined up an investor who will pay a premium for the tax credits. And the premium is another $0.015. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but again, in the scope of a $13.7 million project, getting 86.5 cents for every tax credit dollar versus 85 amounts to a couple $100,000. And again, that's other people's money that will help us complete this project. So it's a great tool. We use New Market's tax credits to complete the courthouse project, which has been very, very successful, I think, and from the city's point of view, very successful too. We've used New Market's tax credits in a project in Claremont that we completed. We will be using New Market's tax credits for a redevelopment of 25 Production Avenue in Keene as a manufacturing facility. And we have a number of other projects that we have in the pipeline now. So it's an exciting project, and we look forward to bringing this incredible project and the equity that it'll recruit to the annex project.
Does anyone have any questions at this stage of the game for Mr. Dugan? Okay. You're on a roll.
I'll talk about how, very, very briefly, how this will all come together. So we'll combine New Market's tax credits with some of the funding that the Keene Library and affiliated entities have raised in the community so far, which, by the way, is remarkable what they've done in a really, really short period of time. There is the potential of a small amount of historic tax credits because the buildings, both the Pond Mansion and the Masons portion of the annex, are older than, I think it's 1930. I can't remember the exact date, but regardless, both of the buildings are old enough to qualify for some historic tax credit funding. again, we'll attribute a value to the building, and last but certainly not least, the proceeds from the $2 million bond from the city. And that's how we'll amass the $13 million. Now, the exciting thing about this is, I mentioned we're going to use other people's money to help build this thing and complete the project. The other really, really exciting thing about it is after the New Markets tax credit recapture period expires, it's a 7-year period, we don't want to own the building anymore. We want you to own the building. So what essentially will happen is you'll get the building back for the outstanding balance of the bond at that point, because the tax credit investors put all those millions of dollars in up front, have realized all the return they want, and they go away. Structure unwinds, they go away. So you'll get a $13.7 million project for about a $2 million bond.
All right. Okay. Steve?
Okay, I just wanted to touch just a little bit on the budgetary impact, what we'll see in our budget when we come work through that in the spring, and how that'll look a little bit different. So through our last budget process, the City Council approved the issuance of a $2 million bond as the city's contribution to this project to do work at Heberton Hall, I think. And so we've got that on our books. We've issued that bond, and in the coming 20 years, we'll have debt service on that bond that will show up in our budget. We'll also, as a part of this financing agreement, the Heberton Hall will be sold to an LLC and be subject to property taxes. So the city will be paying property taxes as a part of this arrangement on that. And then there are two other costs that we anticipate seeing in the budget, which would be a management fee for the running of the project and the partnership over the next 7 years, and also an audit fee for a specialized firm to audit the LLC for each year that's in existence. And how we would fund that is through the Tax Increment Financing District, raising taxes through the TIF. We discussed this some last spring when we were in front of council to expand the Tax Increment Financing District. So there aren't really any surprises here.
Do we know the dollar amount of that budgetary impact at this point?
It'll vary. It'll vary by year, but in the vicinity of about $500,000 a year to be funded through the TIF district, and the bulk of that will be property taxes.
Which is you pay yourself.
Okay. Questions? Councilor Greenwald.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just one piece of reassurance. It was asked, and I'm sure it's still the same answer. This whole process is going to be reviewed by outside counsel so that it's understandable by real, knowledgeable, outside financial folks. Not because it is very complex.
I think you might be referring to the remarks the city attorney made last week. That you'll take that, talk to our bond counsel.
Well, there are a couple of levels of this. One of the levels is, as we know from the courthouse project, that there are so many interested parties in connection with making sure that this process runs right, that everybody's going to have either counsel or financial people looking at it. Jack can attest to that. We were on phone calls with 20, 30 other people sometimes on the phone. So that's one level. But the other one was, there is one final step in the process. We had a preliminary review of the whole project done about a year ago by bond counsel to make sure that it would satisfy the bonding requirements. So at this point, now that the project is in pretty much final form with respect to the financing, we are going to run it by bond counsel one more time. I don't anticipate any changes in that, but we are going to do that at this point.
Councilor Hansel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to be clear for people watching at home, when you say we're adding $500,000 to the budget every year, that's not the net addition to the what the city's really spending, because we are collecting taxes on the project. So can you just clarify that a little bit more, because the way it,
These are
No.
the budgetary impacts that will show up. We present our budget and put the budget in front of you. We'll have $500,000 of expenses offset by $500,000 of funds raised through the tax increment financing district. And of that, in the first year, we anticipate about $290,000 of that to be property taxes, which are raised and paid to fund the cost of the TIF district.
Councilor Sutherland.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just looking through the most recent history of our assessed value for the city. The city's assessed value, even though we have had any number of developments going on in the last number of years, we have seen recent reassessment, and overall we've seen assessed value in the city decline since 2009. I'm concerned about the increased taxes on the TIF district and the negative impact it could have on property values in the TIF district. I'm curious to understand what would happen if we continue to see property values decline and taxes on the TIF district continue to increase to offset the cost of the library. I'm also curious to understand whether or not the new development on Washington Street is in fact included in the new TIF district. Is that something that we had expanded? And will that help bring in the tax revenues and offset any possible property value declines? Thank you.
City?
I'm going to try.
Well,
I'll do my best.
yeah, I mean, it is included, it is part of the TIF district. TIF district was expanded to include the middle school property several years ago.
Okay. And at least as far as the value of property is concerned, once again, I would remind, the assessment process looks backwards, not forward or even present. So you're looking at sales history. From what I understand, and the city assessor can correct me, shake his head, whatever he needs to do, at least from the standpoint of commercial property, there was no drop in assessed value. It was primarily certain districts in the residential portions of the city. Steve?
Just to talk a little bit about that, we've been working on our upcoming CIP, and as a part of that, and as a part of this process, we've taken a look at the values in the TIF district. And what we found was that in our TIF district values from last spring, when we took a good look at this for the expansion of the tax district till now, actually increased by about 1/3% as a result of the revaluation overall. And what we did, as a part of our review of the TIF district, we've looked at the assessed value, assumed no change in assessed value, and projected out, our requirements on this project and our other obligations. And we would have to lose a lot of value in the TIF district we'd have to lose a lot of value in the TIF district to be unable to pay our current obligations.
Okay. Thank you. I just, if I may, I just wanted to make sure that we're not going to get ourselves in any hot water over this. I just wanted to,
Nobody knows the future, but right now.
I'm trying to understand what risks there may be.
Yep.
And whether the increased costs in the TIF district. I mean, we've had a lot of development in the city, namely, particularly in the TIF district, that is untaxable. So that's been a concern of mine, and this is something that we do encourage development, but hopefully at the benefit of the overall taxpayers and the city of Keene. So thank you.
I think we should add to that, though. There has also been a great deal of development in recent past, but also ongoing, that is not in the TIF district. We have new development taking place down on Optical Avenue. We have development taking place in Production Avenue. I think actually Mr. Dugan probably knows better than I the answer to that question. But the reality is there is a lot of development going on within the city that is not involved in the TIF district that will in fact have an impact over the coming year on the amount of assessed valuation in the city. Any further questions? All right, seeing none. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Okay, are there any further questions relating to this item, the development agreement on the library project? If not, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor? There was a motion. There was a motion. All those opposed? It's unanimous.